The fallout from Trump's address to Congress last week just keeps coming, and last week we saw several hosts and pundits tearing apart the lies from the speech, not just because Trump lied, but also because Republicans are so eager to believe the lies even when they are so dumb.
I love days like this. I love news days like this. There's so much to show you. Here's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. People turned out to stand up for science. That was the name of the protest. One of the things he said in his speech was that one of the terrible liberal things that his top campaign donor had discovered was happening in government was research to make mice transgender. And he said that in his speech, and all the Republicans gasped and laughed and jeered because that was so terrible.
$8 million for making mice transgender. This is real.
Actually, it's transgenic mice. And transgenic mice are used in all kinds of laboratory research because mice are transgenic when they have been genetically altered so you can study human illnesses and conditions in them even though they're mice. It is transgenic mice, you numbskulls. But sure, go ahead and shut down all the labs studying all the diseases, because what are you, 5?
But before we discuss, here's what Trump was actually trying to refer to while completely misrepresenting his own point. He literally used the wrong word because he is so dumb. Either that or he is intentionally malicious and disrespectful of his supporters who he apparently thinks are so dumb. Any not dumb person knows that you can't just sub out two words that have two completely different meanings. Transgender and transgenic are not synonyms. But Trump supporters are so trans-crazed that they apparently don't even understand that trans is not a word at all. It's a prefix and it can be attached to many different words. It often is. Are they mad about trans fats? They probably should be. Are they mad about transatlantic flights? There's less to be mad at there, unless you're someone who is concerned with the impact of fossil fuels on the planet, but you know that Trump supporters are not. If they're mad about transgender people, then fine, that is their prerogative. I don't agree with it. I think it's misguided, but sure, it's their right to be mad about less than 1% of the population that doesn't affect them in any meaningful way. Being mad about the existence of transgender people is like being mad about people with peanut allergies. Their lifestyles do not affect you except for in the most negligible ways, in ways that are really just you having to share a planet with people who are different from you. People who are mad about transgender people are mad about things like unisex bathrooms, as if those are anything new. They are not. It's like people who are mad that they get pretzels instead of peanuts on planes now. Like, who actually cares that much about eating peanuts on a plane? No one could possibly care that much about eating this one particular snack on an airplane unless they're choosing to feel victimized over the most inane thing they can think of. Please just grow up. But if you're mad about transgender people, that does not mean that you should by default also be mad about transgenic mice, because the two things are not remotely related. This is the epitome of people being scared of things that they do not understand. It is a sign of low intelligence, and what's concerning is not just that Trump supporters choose to believe his nonsense, but also that his fellow Republicans in Congress cheered for his nonsense claim and since then have refused to correct his statement. Besides, when Trump supporters heard this, particularly the ones who chose to amplify his claim and believe that claim, what did they imagine was happening? How did they think that scientists were determining which gender the mice identified as? Did the mice tell them whether they identified as boys or girls? Did the mice seem resistant to conform to pre-established mouse gender norms? Did the boy mice suddenly want to wear pink bow ties instead of blue ones? It's all so dumb. MAGA just wants people to believe that the left are so ridiculous and woke that we would gladly spend $8 million on research into transgender mice just to prove a point, just because we can, just because mice are people too, or whatever it is that they think we believe, just because we're all so hot for science and so hot for woke. Friendly reminder that the word woke originally just meant to stay vigilant, to stay educated. The fact that Republicans are so anti-woke is very telling. They have become champions of ignorance in their own anti-woke crusades. Here's the thing, I'm not a scientist, but I have taken my fair share of science courses in grade school and in college, knowledge. I don't pretend to be a scientist. I don't pretend to know everything there is to know about the scientific profession or its practices or scientific academia. But I know enough to know that research and knowledge of any kind is valuable, and I know enough to know that politicians will often highlight ridiculous sounding scientific studies to score political points with their voters. I remember George W. Bush doing this back when I was in high school or maybe even junior high school and thinking it was dumb back then. It's easy to misrepresent data and intentions when you're not actually discussing the data or the intentions behind the research. In an effort to galvanize his supporters against common sense and education, then presidential candidate George W. Bush said that liberal scientists were wasting all of this money studying fruit flies. Can you imagine it? Can you believe it? Fruit flies. What he didn't feel was relevant enough to mention to his supporters was that fruit flies were being studied because they share 75% of the genes that cause diseases in humans. According to geneticist Stephanie Moore, flies taught us what the components of many signaling pathways are, how they're wired up with one another, and what acts on them positively and negatively. She said that the full list of things that fruit flies have taught us about genetics and biology would be, quote, very long. And how awesome is that? Why isn't that a thing that excites people? Why isn't that something that people are proud of? Why was it used as a political talking point to demonize science, and then why did it work? What are they going to do next? Demonize math and mathematicians? It's also mind-numbing and ridiculous. It fosters negative feelings in either direction. Either you're mad about science or you're incredulous that people are mad about science. I know I've called a lot of things and people dumb in this video. I'm not sorry for it, but I do recognize that calling people and their beliefs dumb is probably not the best way to earn their support or even their listening ear. And I have to be careful because here I am on this public platform, and believe it or not, I actually don't want to upset people, but I am personally very tired of pretending that every opinion is worth exploring. Some opinions are not opinions at all. They're just wrong beliefs based on wrong information. I shouldn't have to pretend that beliefs rooted in something that is obviously just outright incorrect are not dumb. And honestly, I don't think I have it in me to pretend as much, even if I wanted to. I can't fake that level of empathy, but maybe you're better than me. But I'm also not interested in watering down a message. And we should not have to. I'm not scared to be seen as too far left because I believe that the things I'm fighting for will actually benefit and be popular amongst most Americans. I'm not a fan of the Democrats' current tactic of appealing more to billionaires for political funding, not less, or their prioritization of making themselves more appealing to MAGA Republicans to the point that they alienate their existing base and end up standing for so little that no one identifies with them anymore. There is a reason why Bernie Sanders is as popular among people across the political aisle as he is. The man does not water down his message. He hasn't in decades. He doesn't know how to. On the left, we often go back and forth between wanting to help and educate people, but also not wanting to normalize perceived idiocy. It's a struggle between shaming and alienating people versus giving them a soft landing whenever, if ever, they break out of what we see as their MAGA stupor. Shaming people we know does not work to endear them to your cause or beliefs. They will just categorically dismiss you and anything you say, and you can't blame them for doing so. Sometimes misunderstandings are at the root of disagreements, those you can work with. But debate is meant to start from a place of fact. Both sides are working with the same set of facts, things that are established to be true. But if one side is working with alternative facts, a term that Republicans coined during the first Trump administration, if one side is spewing information that is just flat out wrong, like the president using the wrong word to describe something that he wants his supporters to be angry about, that absolutely needs to be called out. Failure to take any sort of personal responsibility to think about things on the most basic level needs to be called out. The over-intellectualism of the left has been blamed for Trump's rise to power. He appealed to the everyman. He didn't make them feel stupid with his big words or his complicated concepts or his fancy degrees. And our democratic system is now, as it has always been, a popularity contest. People vote for charisma more than policy. Public appeal is rewarded over competence and education, and it's sad to see in a country that also claims to support meritocracy. But one thing that is reassuring is that Trump, despite, as far as we know, legitimately winning the last election, including somehow every single swing state, he has earned his lowest ratings for last week's congressional address. Trump thrives on the attention he receives from us. He cannot manipulate minds or rally support if no one is listening to him or watching him. We need to pay attention to what's going on in our country and in our government, yes, but the more we can tune out Trump's incessant noise and his dense chatter, the better off we will all be. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.